I don't want to take the Pelagian battery that Augustine latched onto. So what am I going to use? We're going to use, this is a picture of a smart person over here, okay? In case you're trying to figure that out. That's what ChatGPT thinks a smart person looks like. We are not going to have an unscriptural presupposition or presumption of the human will, okay? We don't have any need for that. That's not our favorite thing. We're going to have beginner's mind. We're going to have first principles thinking. We're going to engage the right hemisphere. We're going to avoid propositional reduction. We're not going to have a dogmatic system. We're not going to develop our stuff in a rivalrous dynamic. We're going to use the Ephesians 4:16 edification model, not a rivalrous dynamic. What happened over here? Rivalry. Rivalry caused him to be so blind, he went back to his previous religion and the same premise of his opponent in order to form a new system. You can't even spell stupid better than that. That's the best way to be stupid, is to do what Augustine did. That's the best way to be stupid. No presuppositions. Now, that's easier said than done. When I say no presuppositions, I am not under the illusion that we don't all have them. In other words, I still have presuppositions, but we need to understand that we are on a quest to discover and eliminate our presuppositions to the greatest degree that we can. And we need to do so with the tenacity of a pit bulldog, okay? We need to be very serious about finding and eliminating our presuppositions. And, you know, I like talking with people. I like having conversations with people. But when I'm on the phone with somebody or in a dialogue with somebody, either in a message or an email or in chat or something like that, and I can tell they're just riddled with presuppositions, I'm like, please do me a favor and take epistemic practices seriously and try to eliminate some of your presuppositions so that, you know, the conversation can be more productive. Now, if you're earnest, I'm willing to have a conversation with you. But if you're struggling, if you don't even know that you're loaded with presuppositions you got to get rid of, there's a lot of things that need to happen prerequisitely before you can really grow and transform. But you need to have a rigorous, tenacious program in your life by which you identify and eliminate presupposition. It needs to be a very active part of who you are, that you do this process all the time. So I have in the middle here some focal lenses that we can look through. So what if we look through the four kinds of knowing, or moralism, or ego, or modality, or brain hemispheres, locus of authority, orientation, stages of development, spiral dynamics, rivalry or antagonism, resilience, edification modality, like Ephesians 4:16, or something else, Ephesians 4:11-12. Two different things. Certainty or uncertainty, shared fictions, epistemology, operational metaphysics, objectivity. Now, all these things are going on, whether you realize it or not, all these things are going on in your decision-making and in your perception of reality, and you don't even know it, okay? What I'm trying to do on this channel in our growth and transformation content is raise your awareness of these things. Raise your awareness that these things are available there for you to look through, and many others. This is not an exhaustive list. And that the more fluent you get in reading through these lenses, the more metaparadigmatic and the more perspectively capable you can become. So with the four kinds of knowing, everything on the left-hand side is propositionally normative. On the right-hand, and by the way, this is epistemic arrogance over here, and this is epistemic humility over here. On the right-hand side, you have all four kinds of knowing. People, when they hear me talking about propositions, they think I'm against propositional knowing or against the use of propositions. No, I'm not. You need all four kinds of knowing. Propositions are great as long as they point to something real. Propositions are signifiers. If I talk about this coffee mug and someone who speaks Chinese also talks about this coffee mug, it's going to sound very different. Okay, the words themselves are not the coffee mug. But if they can adequately symbolize to someone else who speaks the same language that I'm talking about a coffee cup, then we have success. But if I say coffee cup and I really have a jackhammer, now we got a problem. We have a mismatch, okay? The problem with propositions is that they can be arranged, they can be generated for free and arranged in such a way that doesn't align with anything. And most of Christianity is in that position. Got a bunch of propositions that just invented out of thin air. They're rearranged semantically arranged out of some make-believe worldview that no one ever saw before. So and then everyone's required to believe this arrangement of words for moralistic reasons. Moralism. On the left-hand side, they're using framing, associations. Oh, you're like Pelagius. Moral judgments for epistemic categories. Over here, we have epistemic domain clearly delineated from the moral domain, and we try to avoid NERC. People think you get morality from the Bible, and then the problem is they turn around and use morality to substitute for epistemics. They bring morality. Oh, you're more moral if you believe God is sovereign like I do. So they use a moral argument, essentially, to come over here and force you to think something, to believe an epistemic claim that has no epistemic, it's not epistemically sound. And you're convinced to believe it for moral reasons, not epistemic reasons. And that happens in provisionism, all the things. It happens in all the things. What about your ego? Over here, their emotional identity. They have emotional identity attachments to beliefs, institutions, groups, very important persons. What we're trying to do is decrease emotional identity attachments to anything. What about modality? They are in having mode. Everything is categorical. We are in being mode. We are charitable. They see you only as a Calvinist can only see you as a category of person. They can't see an actual person. They can't interact with a real human being. You're a category to them. You're either a Calvinist or you're something else. And from Calvinist, from non-Calvinist on down are just varying degrees of worseness. Okay. So if you're a non-Calvinist Christian, you're worse than them. You're less moral than them. You're less enlightened than them. Okay, you're less intelligent than them. You're less emotionally astute than them because they can take a horrible God that burns babies and you can't. That's why they think you disagree with Calvinism, because you can't emotionally handle it. And so everybody's worse. And then if you're not even a Christian, well, you're even worse. You're even worse than the Christians who aren't Calvinists. See, so everything is categorically ranked, and it doesn't matter about the individual. The individual has no value. But over here, our modality of being, we're in being mode, and we are charitable with people. We see people as individuals, not as categorical members of a group. Like it's like woke culture. You can't just be an individual. You have to be like a black left-handed cross-eyed leprechaun purple Venus alien, or you're not a real person. You know what I mean? You have all these cross-sectional categories that validate you. The fact that you're an individual doesn't mean anything. And Calvinists are the exact same way as woke culture. You have to have the right categorical identity to mean something to them. And then they categorize you and then deal with you as a member of that category rather than as an individual, just like the woke folks do. And James Lindsay does a pretty good job of comparing woke culture to Calvinism. What about the brain hemispheres? They are left hemisphere dominant and the right hemisphere is subdued. We want to use both hemispheres over here. What about the locus of authority? Theirs is external. Over here, ours should be getting more and more internal. It is he which worketh in you both to will and to do of his good pleasure. Tap into that authority. Over here, you always need something external. The great giants of the faith. John Calvin was such a great man. Who are you to compare yourself to these people? So the pastor, the priest, the confession of faith, their version of the scripture, the authority all resides there. What about orientation? How are you pointed? What are you pointed at? They are profane. They're ideologically oriented, and they're based on conclusions. That's profanity. Over here, we are trying to be sacred, transformation oriented, looking for your second self. In other words, your more Christ-like self. You're oriented toward that. What about stages of development? This will work for stages 1 through 3. We want to grow to stages 4 through 6. What about spiral dynamics? This will work for red, blue, orange, green, and we are trying to be yellow and above. What about rivalry and antagonism? They are rivalrous. They have in-groups and out-groups. They're propositionally normalized. They have debate. We, on the other hand, are trying to be, we do have group associations, but they're based on process, perspective, and participation, not on propositional conclusions. You see the difference? Big difference. What about resilience? They are fragile. Children tossed to and fro with every wind of doctrine. Ephesians 4:14. They have minimal resilience. They have a need for faux certainty. They need answers. They need certainty, which turns religious systems into certainty delivery systems. They get measured by their explanatory power. People ask me a question, and if I can't answer it, what's your view of this? Do you believe in eternal hell? Blah, blah, blah. And if I don't give them an answer right away, they ridicule me for not having an answer, because if I'm some kind of religious person, I'm supposed to have explanatory power. I don't value explanatory power. I don't give a flip about it. Okay? We do what we call epistemic humility over here. So I don't have a position on a lot of things that people ask me about. I used to. I know all the answers. I know what all the answers are supposed to be. I could recite them to you. I could pretend to be an independent fundamental Baptist. And in that pretend mode, I could shut anybody down. I don't care who they are. I know all the false things. I know all the false things that aren't true, that I could win in a rivalrous dynamic in that arena. It's just none of that matters. So there's no reason to do that. So people's need for certainty mixes that it produces institutions who specialize in having explanatory power. Those two things, need for certainty and explanatory power, is the individual and institutional thing that goes together like a puzzle piece. They create each other, okay? And neither one of those things are helpful at all. So we're trying to be resilient, anti-fragile, and even tropophilic. Look that one up. What about edification modality? Over here, they are in broadcast modality, Ephesians 4:11 through 12, in a neotenous way, in a way that has gotten out of control. Should have stopped when they're 3. They're still doing it when they're 33. Okay. Broadcast modality, secured fixed conclusions compiled in having mode. We, on the other hand, want to be in the wisdom gym. We want to bolster our capacity to surf ephemeral insight cascade waves. What does that mean? Truthing as a verb comes in ephemeral waves, like the wave of an ocean. If you're out there trying to surf on a wave in the ocean, that particular wave will come up and it will go back down. Now there could be other waves that are like it, but that particular wave will never happen again. Okay, and so when you're truthing, you have an ability to recognize and ride waves of ephemeral truthfulness. I'm not saying effeminate, ephemeral. In other words, they're not perennial. They pop up. They're contextually appropriate, okay, and then they're not necessarily appropriate in other contexts. So edification modality, okay, that's Ephesians 4:16. Edification model is just one of the ways that I worded it. Certainty and uncertainty over on the left. They need to feel certain to feel secure. But we are becoming adults and a mature disposition. We have a mature disposition to the instability of growth. You got to pay your own bills or you're going to get evicted. Okay. Shared fictions. They have moralistic boundaries around their shared fictions. We try to have clear phenomenological truth makers. So everything over here, Pelagian, Augustine, Pelagian, it's all the same. It's all the same thing. Doesn't matter. See, it doesn't matter what the conclusions are. If it's conclusion based, it's over here on the left. If it's proposition centric, it's over here on the left. It doesn't matter which side of the battery. See, it doesn't matter which side of the battery they hold on to. It's all the same thing. Doesn't matter which side. Has all the same problems. What about epistemology? Okay. For them, it's the culmination of all the previous findings to form a paradigm. For us, we have beginner's mind, first principles thinking all the time, in order to develop a broader fluency in it, so that it can happen all the time. What about operational metaphysics? They have propositional claims of the omniscient and the mode domain. I don't know if y'all are going to understand some of this is immanent domain metaphysics. And we have dynamic movement with immanent, omniscient, and transcendent. So in other words, of all the things that could possibly exist, they think that ontological truth claims about what exists constitutes orthodoxy, right? When orthodoxy is a version of groupthink that should be avoided to start with. And then what about objectivity? Can you be objective? No, they are passionate, which means they are pre-invested in a certain outcome. That's another way of saying they are biased. What we're trying to be is dispassionate, where we are not pre-invested in a certain outcome. When a Calvinist starts talking, they are pre-invested in there not being any free will. When a typical non-Calvinist starts talking, they are pre-invested in there being free will. We are not pre-invested in either one. We don't care. When we start the investigation, when I wake up every morning, I don't care whether or not there's free will. I don't care. I really don't care. I'm open to either one every day. And so we will conduct first principles thinking every day as we go. So I know this list is kind of long, and it took a minute to go through it, but I'm also trying to be thorough, you see? For those of you who are inquiring minds and you want to know and you want to understand, trying to be thorough, trying to help.